Total War Warhammer 2 has been out for a long time now, Jake Kulkowski.
Yes, it has, Mike Williams. Do I need to do it to you too?
Smooth. Yeah, it works.
Yeah,
definitely works, mate. Yeah, it's a vast improvement.
Now that you know who we are.
Yeah. Let's get on with the video, innit? So Total War Warhammer 2 has been out for a while. It's very similar to Total War Warhammer, which came out last year, one of my games of the year. Very similar in scope, but obviously they've made some interesting changes and added some stuff to the campaign and whatnot. But the big deal for this video is the fact that they've added this new way of doing DLC, free DLC called Mortal Empires, which is basically tacking on the campaign from the first game to the new game. So you've got a great big campaign with a double kind of map size and all that sort of stuff, and an insane amount of factions, 295 conquerable settlements, Jake, no less. That's a little stat there for you. 117 starting factions. It's basically a bit of a fantasy Warhammer fans kind of wet dream, to be honest. It really is. Yeah. That's what they're shooting for anyway. So you've been playing a lot of it.
Yeah, certainly have. I, in fact, didn't own the first game. This Warhammer 2 was my first proper Warhammer. I bought it just for this. Not for this video, just for the Mortal
this very moment.
Yes.
This is what it's all been about.
£13 well spent. But yeah, I guess I've done some, retrospective... what's the word? Hang on a sec.
Soul searching.
Retrospective journalism. I've been looking. Been looking into the first.
You
game.
don't want to toot your own horn there. That's what happened there. That's what journalism was there from the get-go, but you weren't sure if you were going to use it.
I was like, oh, dilly-dallying around. Anyway, yeah. So despite the fact I've not played the first one, I downloaded the expansion because here's something that's confusing. You've got Warhammer 2 on your computer, right? You don't have to install Warhammer 1 to play it. It's like a 600 megabyte patch, and what that does, like you're saying, it kind of brings in the map from the first one, the old world. It doesn't bring it in one for one. It does do some cropping and resizing in order to
streamlining, I would say.
Yeah, that's right. But let's say how the Total War fans want to hear it. It's not 100%.
That's it.
It's still the biggest Warhammer map. The biggest Total War map to date. That's a fact. But,
and there have been some big maps. I mean, Rome 2 was pretty huge. Empire was pretty big. But they had this thing where it was like, Empire anyway had this thing where you'd kind of, the map was broken up, so you literally had to load up different parts of the world to see what was going on, right? And that's not what they've gone for here. They've gone for one big seamless kind of map, and that was pretty important to them by the sounds of it. But I mean, let's just get it out of the way, man. Is it fun? Is it good?
Yeah, I'm having loads of fun. I'm playing as the dwarfs at the moment.
Which are the best ones, by the way.
Just for comparison, like when I play Warhammer 2, my favourite has been the lizard men so far. Yeah. So it's a complete different play style. One thing that I've got to say is, as a dwarf, as an ambassador for the dwarfs, basically, I'm holed up in this place, and it's from the old world, and all of my long campaign goals revolve around the old world. So at the moment, my only kind of criticism is, I don't even need to go to Ulthuan and all that area at all.
It's just there. It's background noise for you.
And I mean, like, if you want to go and take on the dwarfs in their own mountains as a faction, you're going to be pretty stupid to do so, aren't you? This isn't a threat to the AI. I'm just
You're
saying,
not calling anyone out here.
I'm just saying, right? If you're around Scathe and Blight, no. Basically, there seems to be two maps put together, but the dwarfs are in map A, so to speak, and all of my goals are still in map A.
Yeah,
so
I know what you
technically don't have to go any of the new areas, which is kind of, to me, it's still new because I didn't play the first one. But I can imagine for people that play the first Warhammer, it might be a little bit too familiar, but it could also be familiar enough to be great, because obviously we're now in the engine of the second game with these changes. And another thing I guess you didn't get to experience in the first Warhammer game was, let's say you're a dwarf, you can't settle in the jungle and all this and all that kind of. Now you can. There's this climate system, isn't there? You could settle, you could take over all, what did you say, 290 million?
295 conquerable settlements.
You can take all of them. The only thing it'll change is how happy your people are, how effective your troops are, stuff. So yeah, I'm having a lovely time. I'm exploring the old world as if it was the new world.
I like what you did there. I think it's a real achievement that they've managed to put two Total War maps together and it not feel too bloated. The biggest worry that I had, and it might be the biggest worry that many players have, is that the turn times are too big. And I really was afraid that 117 starting factions, that is a long time to be waiting between turns. 117 factions doing all their moves. So I'm about 6 or 7 hours in. I'm playing as the Empire, who are kind of slap bang in the middle of the old world, and I thought that'd be a good. And I know they're pretty boring as far as races go, but I thought it would be a good way to expose myself to as much of the game as possible. And the turn times feel okay. They feel like they're just kind of. There is a wait for sure, but it's nothing more than I was expecting. And as well, I've definitely waited longer for less factions in the past with Total War games. So I don't know how they've done it, but it's definitely kind of worked. I think what's important to clear up as well is the fact that we've not reached the end of these campaigns. These are our kind of first impressions. So what I'm hoping will happen as I play this is that I will expand. I will conquer the old world. I'll kind of take over as many settlements as I want. And then, my gaze will turn to the new world, and then I'll kind of set some ships out and then start wrecking shit over there. I think it could have a big effect on the end game, is what I'm saying. Yeah,
especially depending on what your campaign goals are for the races. Because for the dwarves, they're pretty territorial, right? So it's just basically unite all the mountain passes and then clear the Book of Grudges. But if you're playing as the Skaven, it's a bit different. Like you have to corrupt the mountains and stuff. So if you're playing as a Skaven, as far as I'm aware, Queek, his campaign is to go into the mountains where the dwarves are and corrupt there and corrupt this, and this. So, I guess it will depend on one of the many factions you get to play as. Exactly. All the DLC factions that you might have had from the first game are playable in this as well, right? Yep. So that's another thing. Another thing that is actually missed for me. I don't own any of the DLC.
For the original game.
Because as far as I'm concerned, Total War Warhammer was just big DLC for me, because Mortal Empires is basically why I got it,
I mean, so this is a very interesting topic for me. It's a different business model, different way of thinking about doing this. So rather than tack on a new area to an old game or a new expansion to an old game, which is what it would have been like 10, 15 years ago, they'd just come out with an expansion instead of Total War Warhammer 2. That's not what they've done. They've instead come out with a new game and let you bolt your old game onto the new game. So it's a different way of thinking about expanding on PC games, which is quite interesting. It's worked pretty well. The whole logistics of it, I honestly was worried about coming in. For the whole run up of this, when they announced the game, I was excited about the game, but I was also worried about this mega campaign thing, thinking, it doesn't make sense. This sounds like hassle. Like, what am I doing? Why am I buying a new game and sticking my old game to it? Why is that free DLC? Like, why is it not more seamless? But it really is. It does kind of work. I don't want to sound like we're just kind of talking about how amazing this game is, but it does work seamlessly.
I think what the Mortal Empires campaign does that the Vortex campaign didn't do, because that kind of streamlines your duties right.
So the Vortex campaign is the Total War Warhammer 2's main campaign.
That's right. So when you buy Warhammer, this is the sort of the main single player experience. But the Mortal Empires, which is this bolted on one, it's basically just a big sandbox mode, like I was saying a minute ago, because every race, every faction has the ability to plant a stronghold anywhere they want. You can just and you can see the game evolving. You might have one game where the vampires will go to the jungle or whatever. So it gives you the opportunity to just, if you're a fantasy fan, a Warhammer fan especially, this is the closest you're going to get to a big strategy sandbox, I guess.
It really, really is. I mean, when I said at the top of this video that it's kind of a fantasy Warhammer fan's wet dream, it really is. It's a complete toy box of just all of the, there's a few races that haven't made it just yet, but they're going to happen, like the Tomb Kings and whatnot. Yeah. They're going to be making their way into the game. But the majority of the races are there now. You've got the old world and the new world to conquer and explore and negotiate with all these different factions. Yeah. It's quite an accomplishment, I've got to say. As a big strategy fan, I do admire it. Now, people do kind of have a problem with Total War games for their DLC treatment. That does definitely, for me, add a bit of the fiddliness to this whole thing. I don't like immersion breaking stuff. I don't like being reminded that I need to buy stuff, and for that reason I don't like microtransactions, loot boxes. This game is not that different in that you yourself have come into this new, and then what you're thinking about is, I haven't bought these DLC. I'm missing out on the Beastmen and the Wood Elves and whatever because I haven't bought the DLC. So it's like what you've got at the moment is like rather than one game, rather than one Total War package that's complete, you've got like a fucking buffet of stuff. Yeah. And until Total War 3 comes out, all the DLC for that comes out, and they release an ultimate Total War fucking
like
package
extravaganza. Sort of thing. Yeah, because I think it was $195 for everything if you was to buy it all from scratch.
Yeah, which combined. Is a lot of money.
So all of a sudden your sort of Mortal Empires campaign with all the bells and whistles is a big game. I mean, it is a big game in every sense. So the price being big, kind of, it's a thing that's strategy game wide. You're talking about Crusader Kings and things like that. They've all got something very similar. But yeah, it adds quite a lot of freshness to if you're just familiar with the Total War 2, the most recent one, which is like what I am. Like I was playing the Vortex campaign, which again is the base single player experience within Total War Warhammer 2 as the Lizard Men, right? So the guy that I was playing as is Mazda Mundi. If you're not familiar with Total War, you'll probably see a nice bit of him on screen now. Big fat lizard on I can't remember if I've got the Stegodon yet, or if it's just a floating
chair.
But he's changed, so now like when you're playing Mortal Empires, you start off with a Feral Bastildon as your starting units. You didn't have that in the Vortex campaign, and I think you get Crocosaur ones, So there have been changes to units that you start with. So it's not like a complete copy and paste job. There are little tweaks and changes and things like that.
It is refreshing as well to not have the. I do like the Vortex campaign stuff. So the Vortex campaign, maybe we should explain very briefly, is a very story-driven experience in Total War Warhammer 2. That is the main campaign in Total War Warhammer 2, and it just basically like normal Total War, except stuff happens around a vortex, and it says, oh, there's rituals going on. Oh, there's rites. You can do some rites, and so there's a streamlined thing that's designed to bring the campaign to a climax at the end, rather than peter out after you've conquered everywhere, which is what the developers are saying was a problem. I like that idea. I think that's good. However, it is refreshing to have this kind of new world available to me without having to worry about the vortex.
Less funneled, you can spend your time in your own regions or whatever. Speaking of regions and the new and old factions, there are some changes to where they start. So if you've got Warhammer 2 and you're like playing as the Skaven, Queek Headtaker, he's like in a desert somewhere now, where the Tomb Kings, I guess, will go eventually. So it changes that, which can completely change your first 50-odd turns of the game, right, where you are. I think this is probably best seen as a really, really great loyalty bonus for fans of the series, right? Yeah. Or, in my case, very fucking expensive DLC.
Well, I guess this is maybe the big question for you now. You came into Total War Warhammer 2, maybe, I don't want to take any credit for it, maybe because I was talking about it all the time.
It was,
you know what, it was a hot recommendation from Mike Williams, you're welcome. But you came into Total War Warhammer 2, really, and then you've had to retrospectively go, I'm going to buy the original one because I quite fancy playing Mortal Empires. Is that worth it? Or is it purely there, do you think, as a loyalty bonus for big series fans?
I love it. I really do. I don't know if it's down to me personally, because the playstyle, like the dwarves, are the best so far.
They really are.
I've played awesome, all, apart from the Dark Elves, all the ones in Total War 2. Depends on your playstyle. You might be really besotted with how the High Elves play or something like that, and then it might not seem like that. Another thing to consider again is that I'm buying Total War Warhammer like a year or so after, so I got it for cheap, right? It doesn't.
Don't ever buy it full price.
In fact, I bought Warhammer for cheaper than some of the DLC you can get for Warhammer. Like, the Wood Elves or whatever are more expensive than the base game at this point.
That's right.
So I'm really, really enjoying it. And as far as I'm aware, again, it depends on your preference. The Vortex campaign is quite funnily. You have to go for these rights and things. I'm enjoying Mortal Empires a lot more. Like, my first Total War campaign I will finish, I'm 99% sure is going to be Mortal Empires. And that wouldn't have happened if I wouldn't have bought it. So I feel like completely besotted with the game. And it's killed off every other, considering that, we're supposed to be like looking at new games and things like that. That's like completely ruined my life at the moment. I mean, all I'm doing is thinking about when can I get on Total War and do some more turns. There are, like you were saying earlier about the turn time, it is long. The further on into the game I'm getting, I don't know if it's just feeling longer or people are just doing more shit. But it's like, get a podcast on.
It's honestly, that's
maybe
good advice. Get a podcast, because it's for sure. It's okay. Your factions get eliminated and starting factions kind of die off and whatever. But the more the game, it's like entropy or whatever. It's the fucking fundamental physics principle. The more time that goes on, you've got all these factors at play. They have more decisions to make, and it just takes longer for them to make decisions because the melting pot is getting stirred more and more. So the AI has to think longer about what it's doing, and it's as simple as that. The turn time's just pretty much go upwards after a certain point now, I find in my experience. But yeah, overall, I'm very, so Jake, you're obviously very enthusiastic about it. It's a strong recommendation from you. I've got to agree that if I hadn't bought Total War Warhammer and only bought Total War Warhammer 2, I think that it is, as a package, it's just great. Just buy it on sale, innit? Like you said, you can get it for like 13 quid now. The base Total War Warhammer game, the original one, just wait for a sale and get it. It's a strong recommendation from both of us, I think, overall. The only problem, like I said, is the turn times can be pretty long, and it's be interesting to see how that pans out in future. And B, that it does feel a bit like a DLC buffet at this point, and they've got to be careful how they manage what they're actually selling here, because Crusader Kings 2 is an absolute mess of DLC, and it's kind, it's quite off-putting for me. And I'm just I don't want to see the same thing happening to Total War, because it can be quite intimidating for players on the outside, and I want as many people as possible to come into this series because it's cool. Right, you got anything else to say?
If anyone was listening all the way through this thinking, are they ever going to mention that new one, Total War Saga, the Viking one? Yeah.
That looks flipping amazing.
It looks pretty cool.
I'm very excited.
It's a little Easter egg. That's like a little post-credit scene,
It's
wasn't it?
Marvel. This is getting advanced.
Watch out.
Yeah.
That's it.
Right, leave it there. See you later. Bye.
The Viking horde swept west. An insatiable force that brought Alfred the Great to his knees. But some men can only be pushed so far.